My opinion on this topic has evolved an awful lot over the years, especially in the last 12 months or so. Those of you who are new to Death by Bungie may not be familiar with the fact that Bungie actually is the name of my 2010 Excalibur Axiom, a wonderful crossbow. I was going to say a wonderful little crossbow, but it's actually a giant crossbow, 36 inches wide, 39.5 inches long, a very big crossbow, and it's also an older, slower crossbow. I love that crossbow, had a lot of adventures with it, most of which are detailed in my book, The Death by Bungie Crossbow Story. You should check that out if you haven't already. It's on Amazon.com, and that will bring you up to speed with the evolution of Death by Bungie. That crossbow means an awful lot to me. It opened the doors for all of the crossbow hunting to come, all of the crossbow hunting that made Death by Bungie what it is. I will never get rid of that crossbow. I have it. I'll keep it forever. It's a wonderful crossbow. It will make an appearance or two this season. It will make an appearance here in Crossbow Appreciation Month. It will. It will be out here. In fact, by the time you see this video, we will have already done a live stream. I am out of my Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee using Bungie to run some speed tests. So that crossbow is not going anywhere. Don't worry about that. However, over time, I was routinely running into problems with a lack of penetration, with deer jumping the string, and over the years, as one might expect, I started looking at upgrading that older, slower crossbow. Last year in particular, you will remember, I did Crossbow Appreciation Month. We do that every year. That's 31 videos and 31 days right here on Death by Bungie. It's a time for you to get out there and start appreciating your crossbow. Get it lubed up, get it ready, get it sighted in for the upcoming crossbow seasons. Last year, for me, that meant playing around with heavier arrows. I was trying to increase the penetration that I got from Bungie. I'd also done an awful lot of calculating on online calculators, going around and checking the kinetic energy, checking the amount of momentum, the amount of slugs, if I upgraded to these heavier arrows. And yeah, there's a difference. You actually do increase kinetic energy a little bit. You do increase the momentum of the arrows a little bit by doing that. During that time, I talked to friends of Bungie, some of whom sent me arrows, which I very much appreciate. The conversations going back and forth with friends of Bungie, man, did I learn a lot going back and forth with friends of Bungie online. In the end, I put my plans for upgrading Bungie aside for yet another season, and I went through my 11th season hunting with a crossbow using the old Bungie, the original Bungie. What really was the straw that broke the camel's back, however, was when Genevieve and I went to Maryland. I try to hunt in Maryland every year with my crossbow, but last year Genevieve and I were in a blind that was just a little bit too small for Bungie. I've hunted out of small blinds before. In fact, I prefer small blinds. They seem to be less intrusive to the deer. The problem was this blind was not big enough for me to actually lift Bungie up. It was too small of a blind. Fortunately, Genevieve was there with me. Genevieve had her crossbow, Bungie Jr., and whether she wanted to or not, I don't know, but she loaned me that crossbow for one evening's hunt, and I managed to shoot a doe with that smaller, faster crossbow. And I did so at 40 yards. Now, I was a little bit familiar with that crossbow. I shot it in the backyard a few times. I knew what it was capable of. I suspected it was going to be capable of taking this deer, taking this shot successfully at 40 yards. The deer was exactly 40 yards. I used the rangefinder a few times to make sure of that. Knowing that this crossbow was shooting around 350 feet per second or so, I felt pretty comfortable with it. The deer was not alert, was not looking at me, was instead fixated on something down the field, probably other deer. And I took that shot. Go watch that video if you haven't seen it already. That was really the turning point in Death by Bungie when I realized that it was time to upgrade to a smaller, faster crossbow. Now, even though that shot with Genevieve's crossbow with Bungie Jr., the deer did duck a little bit before that arrow got there. The shot was a little bit high, went through the shoulder blade, got some penetration there, managed to find that deer without any problem, however. So the crossbow did its job. The broadhead did its job. The arrow did its job at 355 feet per second or so. Now, I know what you're saying. If you're an old-time friend of Bungie, you know that I've done plenty of videos on speed here on this channel. I've talked about it many, many times. And in fact, I've made the statement that, look, jumping the string is not a problem with an older, slower crossbow like Bungie, shooting around 305 feet per second at its peak. My argument then had always been, take those shorter shots. You don't have to worry about that. I should have knocked on wood when I made that statement in particular, because I was increasing the number of spine shot deer that I was taking home, and basically it's a problem. It's a problem. Now, I did an interview with Darren Cummings, a young man who had built a little bit of a machine to use on a video with Dr. Grant Woods. That video actually came out years ago, and it was a video that was doing some pretty intense, pretty up-to-date, pretty modern testing on the phenomenon of jumping the string, deer jumping the string. Go watch that video and watch it in its entirety, because there's a ton of really good information in there. Information that was not previously available online or on YouTube. I was able to spend some time with Darren online, and I'm sharing that information with you in that video. One of the takeaways from that video is that more modern speeds, even back then, the 415 feet per second Ravens, even back then, a few years ago when that video was made, those crossbows were able to perform better in the terms of jumping the string than other archery equipment.
We tested the Raven, the crossbow, and it was shooting 413 feet per second. And at 40 yards, it was barely dropping. I'm confident we would have moved to 50 and it would have still hit that balloon with no issues.
If you really want to understand what he's talking about hitting the balloon, go check out that video. Distance was one big measurement, one big factor in jumping the string in that video. One of the really big factors in those tests. So deer jumping the string, I really had two options. If I wanted to stay with Bungie, I really had one option, and that was to decrease the yardage, decrease shot distance. I like that idea. I don't have any objection to shooting deer closer rather than farther away. The problem is the deer object to that. I really couldn't shorten up my shots any more than I already had. I have talked time and time again on this channel about setting up your shots in advance, basically setting up your ambush sites so that there isn't a great distance between you and where the deer, your target deer, is likely to be, or your target animal. I've done a very good job of that, and I really understand that. It's part understanding the equipment that I use, it's part understanding the deer's behavior, and also understanding the area where I'll be hunting, that sort of thing. It's worked very well for me over time. But even my 2020 buck, another turning point in my evolution as a crossbow hunter, so to speak, jumped the string a little bit at 20 yards. I had set that shot up perfectly. That deer was exactly where I wanted that deer to be, where I anticipated taking a shot months earlier when I set up that blind. That deer still jumped the string at 300 feet per second, jumped the string at 20 yards. A little bit. Still found the deer, still very proud of that accomplishment. The only other option I had really was to increase speed. Now, there's really no way to increase the speed of an older, slower crossbow. You can put a different string on it, maybe get a couple feet per second or something like that, but nothing that is going to make any significant difference. The more I looked into this, the more I spent time talking to folks like Darren Cummings. I did this interview with him around Christmas time of 2020. This really set me on a path of looking to upgrade, because I realized that the difference between 300 and 400 feet per second is more than just 100 feet per second. You understand? It's more than that. It has a greater impact on your hunting than I previously thought. When you look at that video that Darren Cummings and I did, when you look at the research that they did, the difference between that 308 feet per second bow that was tested and what he talks about with the 400 feet per second bow, it makes all the difference in terms of deer jumping the string over those distances.
And at 40 yards, it was barely dropping. I'm confident we would have moved to 50 and it would have still hit that balloon with no issues.
Penetration. Now, that's another reason to start talking about increasing the speed of your crossbow. That's another reason to start talking about upgrading to a faster crossbow. At least it was for me. When we talk about momentum, it's a little bit different. You can increase the weight, or you can increase the speed of your arrow, or you can increase both. But if you increase one of those two factors, the weight or the speed, they're both equally weighted in that equation. They're both of equal value. You increase the weight, you increase momentum. You increase speed, you increase momentum, the same amount. Last year, 2020, Crossbow Appreciation Month, a lot of our 31 videos in 31 days was dedicated to heavier arrows. Friends of Bungie shared arrows with me, sent me arrows. I tried them out. I tried them out in live streams. I tried them out in the backyard, ran tests with them. I recorded all the data, wrote down numbers, tested the penetration of one arrow versus another arrow, measured that to see what difference that would make. And yeah, it made some difference. It made a little bit of difference. I even went to the second ever Death by Bungie meet and greet and tested heavier arrows on a big old boar. And sure enough, it was perfect in terms of penetration. I got more penetration on that than I would have, most likely, with those stock arrows. There's no question that it increased the penetration on that older, slower crossbow. But here's the problem. When I ran the numbers, and believe me, I ran a lot of numbers. These different websites like bestcrossbowsource.com, they have an arrow drop calculator, an arrow momentum calculator on there. I've played around with a Realtree one, you'll remember from Crossbow Appreciation Month, talking about whether or not a crossbow would moose. I really enjoyed that. A lot of fun with those different calculators. There are tons of them online. Check them out and play around with them. I spent a lot of time doing that. But one thing I realized was, under no circumstances can I get Bungie to reach the same numbers that you get with a newer, faster crossbow. It can't be done. Bungie shooting in the 0.5s for momentum, when you measure that in terms of slugs, about half a slug of momentum. Heavier arrows will increase that momentum up to almost the 0.7, somewhere in the 0.6s, right? The mid 0.6s is about the best I'm going to do. I can increase it, go to an even heavier arrow, but the problem with that is you're dropping your speed from that already slow 305 feet per second, but you're dropping it down to 250 feet per second, or even slower if you go into 600 grains and above. I don't know about you, but if I wanted to hunt at 250 feet per second, I wouldn't be shooting a crossbow. When I'm already having problems with deer jumping the string, I don't think going slower is going to fix that problem. Now, don't misunderstand me here. There's something in this video for the heavy arrow guys, the guys that really want that momentum and like those heavier arrows. More power to you. But a faster crossbow, that's going to give you more speed to give. You want to increase your arrow weight, you'll still have a faster crossbow if you start with a faster crossbow. The arrow speeds drop pretty fast, but at least if you're starting at 450 feet per second, maybe you can end up at 400. Maybe you can end up at 380 and still reduce the likelihood of deer jumping the string. And there's one more advantage across the board of having a faster crossbow, at least that I can think of, or at least that I wrote down in my notes. And that advantage is a flatter trajectory. I have said before, I stand by it. Archery is not about flat crossbows. Even the new Raven, 500 feet per second, even that crossbow is not going to shoot flat. It shoots a lot less arcy than other crossbows, that's for sure. And crossbows in general, modern ones, do shoot a lot flatter than more traditional forms of archery. But that doesn't mean they shoot flat. They do have an arc to them. But the faster you are shooting, the arrow's not in the air long enough for gravity to affect it.
Gravity acts on something over time. So let that kind of sink in. So the longer something is in the air, the more it's going to drop. So you have a slower arrow, it's going to take longer to reach the target, and gravity's just going to have more time to work on it.
Thank you, Darren Cummings. That's a much better way to put it. He's an engineer, expresses that kind of stuff a lot better than I do. But basically, with a faster arrow, the faster that arrow is, you're going to have a flatter trajectory. What difference does that make to us as crossbow hunters? Well, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? A flatter trajectory means that you're going to have a more accurate shot, by and large. If you're a little bit off on the distance, a flatter trajectory is going to have less deviation in your shot than a more archy trajectory, right? And that, my friends of Bungie, that is what crossbow hunting is all about. Accuracy is number one with crossbows. Now, it's true, you get a really fast crossbow and you're not making accurate shots. All you're going to do is make those inaccurate shots a lot faster, right? That's not the goal here. That's not the point. But if you are sighted in properly, you're familiar with your equipment, you're taking realistic shots that aren't in a rainstorm and aren't in the middle of a windstorm or anything like that, you're probably going to be a little bit better off if you've got a faster crossbow, if you're a little bit worried about the distance. Now, I always thought of the original Bungie as the older, slower crossbow in the family. 305 feet per second. Jealous of Genevieve's 355 feet per second micro suppressor. Great little crossbow. This year, I'll be heading into the woods with the Scorpid Deathstalker 420, Bungie 3.0. The Death by Bungie crossbow story continues to evolve now, doesn't it? We're adding this newer, faster crossbow, but already Genevieve is referring to her crossbow as an older, slower crossbow. I thought that was kind of funny. And already, this year, they're releasing a 500 feet per second crossbow, and Scorpid puts on its website that their 480 feet per second crossbow is the world's second fastest crossbow. Go figure. So that continues to evolve. It continues to change. I think we as crossbow hunters need to keep an open mind and continue to change. I think we need to continue to roll with the punches. We need to continue to evolve now, don't we? We need to take what we've learned in the past, but sort of look at it from a new, fresh perspective. And hopefully, this series of videos, Speed Week, will do just that. Good luck out there. Thank you for watching. And all hail Bungie. All 305 feet per second of them.